Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here to listen to the Laborfest Writers of San Francisco. I'm one of the members, and you will be meeting all the others as they take their turns reading to you. And what's really exciting is that I think Laborfest Festival has been going on for how many years? I don't even know. I can't keep track, but anyway, we're excited to be here, and we hope that you'll not only listen to our members read, but also to think about buying the book, the Laborfest anthology, which is available here, and you can support both Bird Beckett and the Laborfest Writers Group. Okay, and so it's a really nice evening. I'm glad it's not too hot, even though some people are suffering from the heat in other parts of California and such. But we'll get going, and I'd like to introduce the first reader, Robert Eugene Rubino. He's a journalist, he's a writer, he's a sports enthusiast, a jazz writer, and all kinds of things. I can't even give you the entire biography of Robert, but he's been a member of Laborfest Writers now for about 4 years, and so let's welcome Robert.
Thank you, Nellie. It's great to be here. This is my first time doing this for Laborfest Writers. I have 3 short pieces of my own, and then I'm going to read some pieces from 2 of our members who are in Europe right now and were unable to come tonight. Actually, I'm reading 2 of the pieces I'm reading are from other writers because I thought it was appropriate, and I was impressed enough with these pieces. The first one is called Who Burns for the Perfection of Paper by Martin Espada. At 16, I worked after high school hours at a printing plant that manufactured legal pads. Yellow paper stacked 7 feet high and leaning as I slipped cardboard between the pages, then brushed red glue up and down the stack. No gloves, fingertips required for the perfection of paper, smoothing the exact rectangle. Sluggish by 9 p.m., the hands would slide along suddenly sharp paper and gather slits thinner than the crevices of the skin, hidden. Then the glue would sting, hands oozing, till both palms burned at the punch clock. 10 years later, in law school, I knew that every legal pad was glued with the sting of hidden cuts, that every open law book was a pair of hands, upturned and burning. The second piece is it's an excerpt from a column by a man named Will Bunch. He's a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and back in May, he wrote about the migrants that were killed in the accident on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And it moved me so much that I felt the urge to read and share it with you tonight. From the day in the mid-2000s when a then 20-year-old Mainor Yasser Swatso Sandoval crossed the border into America, he never stopped working. The youngest of 8 children, Swazo was fleeing numbing poverty from a small rural village in the western mountains of Honduras. The undocumented Swazo wound up in Greater Baltimore, a magnet for Central American refugees, with its relatively cheap housing for the bustling eastern seaboard, a friendly climate toward migrants, and lots of opportunity. With American dreams of entrepreneurship, He took menial jobs like cleaning brush, then launched a package delivery service. And when COVID-19 ended that, he started working overnight construction for a Baltimore contractor. Suazo was described by friends and family as happy, outgoing, tireless. He had to be. While supporting a wife and 2 kids, he was also sending money back, enough to help family members buy a small hotel and even support youth soccer. In Baltimore, he was what his brother called the fundamental pillar for a growing number of relatives who made it to Maryland. Home from the grueling construction work at 5 a.m., he was out working again by noon, picking up extra dollars, cleaning yards, painting houses, landscaping. He always told us that you had to triple your effort to get ahead, his brother Martin Suazo Sandoval told the Associated Press from Honduras. He said it didn't matter what time or what the job was. You had to be where the work was. And at 1:28 a.m. on a Tuesday in May, the work was on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Suazo and 7 men with stories very much like his, migrants from the neighboring countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Mexico, were filling potholes on the region's major span on a raw March night. They were doing a backbreaking job at a wretched hour, one that many other Americans simply can't or won't do, all so their neighbors could drive safely to their warm, comfortable office cubicles in the dawn's early light. When the captain of the massive container ship radioed that the vessel had lost power and was careening toward the bridge, police had just enough time to block traffic, saving an unknown number of lives. But they ran out the split seconds needed to rescue the construction crew. Suazo, 38 years old, died along with 5 of his workers. In normal times, the deaths of these 6 migrants would serve as a tragic parable about how our American landscape was etched into existence by the big dreams, hard-earned sweat, and occasionally the sacrifice of each new generation of Mainor Suazos as they came from Ireland, then from Italy, then from Honduras, and from all over the globe. But these are not normal times. One of the biggest truths about 21st century America is that while our corrupt institutions fail us, the strength of everyday people nevertheless persists. The many heroes in that dead of night darkness were the ones we branded as essential workers in 2020. The ship's crew members who calmly warned about the looming crash, the cops who raced out in seconds to block the road, and yes, those dads out filling potholes at 1:28 a.m. The immigration debate America ought to be having is one that safely manages asylum seekers at the border while creating a more efficient pathway to citizenship and the American dream for the likes of Suazo, who is said to be closing in on legal U.S. residency. This next piece is short. It's my own. It's just a kind of a memoir of growing up. I call it The War Against. In the 1950s, my family had an undeclared war on poverty. It needed to be real but undeclared because merely saying the word poverty frightened my parents, especially my mother, and might jinx us if we said it out loud. At least that was the feeling I remember having. There were 5 of us, 2 parents, 3 boys living in a 3-room apartment in Queens. Each night, my parents converted the 9x12 living room into their bedroom by converting their Castro convertible couch into their bed. We 3 boys shared the bedroom, 2 of us in bunk beds. We didn't feel poor despite these living arrangements. On holidays, we somehow crammed grandparents and uncles and aunts into the apartment. On Christmas, a ceiling-scraping Christmas tree and lots of toys, sometimes even bicycles, crammed into that bedroom turned back into a living room. None of us suspected we were poor, at least not out loud. In fact, my mother would insist we were middle class. As I got older, that is, when I became a grumpy, overly opinionated teenager and pushed back on the categories of economic class, my mom would admit, well, we're actually lower middle working class. The middle part of that might have been a bit of a stretch, but I remember liking the working class part of that because it rang loudly with truth. My father worked 6 days a week as a freight elevator operator. During Christmas season, he additionally worked part-time for the post office. My mother, before landing a 20-year civil service career for the New York State Housing Authority, worked from the apartment as a telemarketer, or as it was called in those days, a telephone solicitor, selling magazine subscriptions and gym memberships and get out the vote calls for local Democrats. When I was 11 and 12, I delivered the Long Island Star-Journal to about 30 or 40 neighborhood customers on my souped-up bicycle with red, white, and blue plastic streamers flowing from the handlebars. That was our war against poverty. These next two pieces are by the folks who couldn't make it tonight, Keith and Margaret Cooley. Keith is a writer of fiction and memoir and has published 3 novels. He grew up in London, England, and went to Abbotsfield Secondary Modern School, where he took O-level plumbing and passed with a grade 1. Keith's story that I'm going to share appears in our anthology. Public conveniences at Shepherd's Bush. One day, driving through London, my dad said, "Your grandfather built the public conveniences at Shepherd's Bush." At 14, this was all I knew about my grandfather, who died the year I was born. Intrigued, I descended the concrete steps from the street into a damp, echoing netherworld rank with the smells and sounds of bodily functions. I pointed Percy at the porcelain and looked around. Men lurked in the shadows. This was not a place to linger, even to admire grandfather's handiwork. Just get the job done and relieve yourself. Get out of there as quickly as you can without soiling yourself. Breathe through your mouth to avoid the miasma leaking from under the wooden door of each stall. Then bound up the stairs out to the fresh carbon monoxide of Shepherd's Bush roundabout. I had failed the 11+ examination. In England, that meant I went on to secondary modern school instead of a grammar school. That meant I stayed with the working class kids rather than the middle class children. That meant I would get a job working with my hands rather than at a desk. My parents, being good working class, had wanted me to go to secondary modern even if I had passed the 11+. So I went to Abbotsfield Secondary Modern in Middlesex. Abbotsfield had a vocational bias, and at age 13, I took the building course with classes in building construction, technical drawing, brickwork, carpentry, and plumbing. At 14, I specialized in my best subject, which was plumbing. Each day I would go to learn the rudiments of plumbing with diminutive form master Minnie Martin. In a drafty workshop replete with tools arrayed on the wall and black metal cylinders reeking of noxious gases, I learnt the intricacies of fashioning wooden pegs, filling a length of copper pipe with sand, and plugging each end with the wooden pegs, heating the pipe and then bending it. In the current world of plumbing, copper pipes are bent with a special flexible steel wire snake that fits inside the pipe to prevent buckling of the soft copper. I learned the subtleties of shaping sheets of malleable lead into flashings, using special wooden tools to beat the lead into shape without ever cutting it. This was great fun, but not much use in the world of plumbing in the 1960s. But I wanted to be a plumber, have a trade, as my parents said. I was good at it. But I got in with a bad lot who encouraged me to go on to Nottingham University. I began to first form my school and from my family to go to university, and I left plumbing behind. 10 years ago, my dad died and left me an untidy pile of old black and white photographs and some crumpled certificates, birth, marriage, death. Curious, I sorted through. I found the marriage certificate of my grandfather, Arthur Charles, whose occupation was listed as jobbing plumber. It also cited his father, David Henry, and listed his occupation as master plumber. I pulled the 1901 census record for David Henry and found all the males in the household. David Henry, my great-grandfather, David Edgar, my great-uncle, Arthur Charles, my grandfather, they were all listed as plumbers of one sort or another. I came from a family of plumbers. 3 years ago, I moved to San Francisco and started to manage a 1929 Spanish Revival-style apartment building. I do repairs in the apartments. I change washers, fix toilets, fix kitchen sinks. I do plumbing, the family profession. But lately I've come to the realization I just don't have the patience or the real skill to be a plumber. Perhaps that is why my dad never went into plumbing. I'm a writer who tells stories, part memoir, part fiction. And this last piece is from Margaret Cooley. Margaret is a cultural worker who writes nonfiction and poetry. Her writing often focuses on her working class Irish American heritage. She also writes about the oppression of people worldwide. She is a founding member of the Laborfest Writers Group. She contributed a short poem called Artificial Intelligence. Seems a bit like artificial flowers. Looks like the real thing from a distance. But look closer and notice no smell, no taste, no soft petals, no ladybugs, no sweetness, no pollen, no bees, completely lifeless. The artificial requires no maintenance, no watering, no pruning, no cleanup, no mess, no replacement, no decay. Sterile, limited, adding no beauty, no life, adding nothing to humanity or any living thing. Garbage in, and in the end, garbage out. Thank you for listening. Our next writer is Jerry Path. Jerry grew up on a dairy farm without running water or electricity. In his working life, he's developed a sense of alienation from the capitalist system. He tries to use this perspective in his writing. Jerry Path.
Nice to sit. Yeah, I picked the topic of artificial intelligence too. My piece is much longer. It's quite a challenging topic. So I'm going to start by taking a brief glimpse at the exploitation of labor and the appropriation of natural resources in the global south. Can you hear me? Without which today's sophisticated and artificial intelligence could not even function. For the following, I used information from the online section of the monthly review website. Modern AI uses chat boxes that are capable of human-like conversation, can answer questions, write articles, and even do coding. But behind even the most impressive AI systems are people called annotators. A few months after graduating from college in Nairobi, Kenya, a 30-year-old by the name of Joe, a pseudonym, got a job as an annotator. The tedious work of processing the raw information used to train artificial intelligence. AI learns by finding patterns in enormous quantities of data. But first, the data has to be sorted and tagged in various work centers or factories by people constituting a vast workforce of millions working separately in cubicles. In Joe's case, he was labeling footage for self-driving cars, identifying every vehicle, pedestrian, cyclist, anything a driver needs to be aware of, frame by frame, and from every possible camera angle. It's difficult and repetitive work. A several-second blip of footage took 8 hours to annotate, for which Joe was paid about $10. The average wage is about $1.20 an hour. There is a lot going on that is invisible to us behind the magic of the cloud. I turn now to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC. In 2022, two metals, copper and cobalt, were exported for a combined total of $25 billion. Yet, despite its wealth in natural resources, the people of the DRC struggle to survive. In the same year, the World Bank found that around 75% of the DRC's population lives on less than $2.15 a day, and about 1 in 6 lives in extreme poverty. Workers in the DRC mining cobalt, a key ingredient in the batteries that power most electric vehicles, receive a wage of about $3.50 a day for unsafe and dangerous work that often results in injury and even death. And they are not passive victims. They have been struggling long and courageous. There have been long and courageous struggles against imperialism, beginning with the murder of Lumumba. But there is much more history after this and probably before. I'm sure before Lumumba there was a lot of struggle going on. But I don't have space for all of that. And the DRC is, of course, only one of a very long list of exploited countries in the global south. In the global north, at the top of the consumption chain, I will take the example of Amazon, whose workers toil in what it calls fulfillment centers, working, they say, to bring happiness to the consumer. To bring about this happiness, workers are monitored by the watchful eye of AI that keeps track of any wasted motion and at the same time monitors any pro-union activity. Wages are kept low because warehouses are strategically located in places where there is plenty of surplus labor. Despite the hierarchy and vast differences of the global labor force, workers of the world have a lot in common. Also beyond the public Also beyond much public awareness is that the growth in AI has been supported by a vast build-out of data centers and a steady rising demand for electricity to run the computers and servers they are housed in, as well as the air conditioners that must run continuously to prevent their overheating. In fact, the cloud now has a greater carbon footprint than the airline industry. Let's think about the concept of progress. Here I take inspiration from Jason Hickel's important book, Less is More. Artificial intelligence prides itself as the height of progress. Gross domestic product, or GDP, is the conventionally accepted measure of progress in our capitalist society. However, there are reasons to question this. Beginning with World War II, all increases in national income were characterized as constituting economic growth and thus progress. This included such things as military spending, including the development and use of the nuclear bomb. GDP also included planned obsolescence. That is, almost anything that was sold came with a planned limited lifespan, resulting in ever overflowing landfills. This was good for sales and for the economy, but devastating for our environment. It also included as a national income the unending and manipulative advertising that drives today's internet. GDP is better seen as a measure of the health of capital than it is a measure of human well-being. Jason Hickel cites alternative measures of progress, such as the Genuine Progress Indicator, or GPI. It starts with personal consumption expenditure, adjusts for income inequality, as well as the social and environmental cost of economic activity. I need to cut to the chase here and talk about imperialism and its need to enforce inequality with its military might over the entire world as the main obstacle to genuine progress. There has been a long history of resistance and fight back against imperialism, but I want to concentrate on resistance within today's military, a resistance I was mostly unaware of until reading an article from a paper called People's Dispatch on the Monthly Review website. I was aware of Aaron Bushnell, who set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy to protest U.S. complicity in genocide. But I was not aware that shortly after Bushnell's self-immolation, veterans of U.S. wars collectively burned their uniforms in protest in Portland, and that this action was repeated throughout the country. More recently, they also organized a massive projection of anti-war imagery on a U.S. warship docked for Fleet Week with slogans such as, "Stop the war machine," and "You have blood on your hands." On June 8th, a contingent of U.S. veterans joined a 100,000-strong protest in front of the White House, creating a synergy between the two groups. One of these vets captured the ferment within the U.S. military. I don't want to see children murdered anymore. This is beyond the pale of what can be justified in the name of nationalism, in the name of anything that would have any semblance of what one would call the sovereignty of a so-called nation. The self-determination of the Palestinian people is paramount to humanity, and their fight is our fight. End quote. Human beings have a conscience. We can feel guilt, unlike even the most sophisticated AI machines. It takes courage to stand up to the military machine. But it is happening. Change is coming from the bottom up, or change. There are signs that change is coming from the bottom up. We are not alone. This is a task that has been taken up by millions. This is what gives me hope. Thank you. Our next presenter is Barbara Saunders. Barbara left Westchester County, New York at age 17, called by the Grateful Dead. She is an award-winning poet, writer, and solo theater performer in Berkeley, whose poetry and criticism has appeared in Highland Park Poetry. Barbara is at work on a memoir, Dead Dreams. Please give a warm welcome to Barbara Saunders.
Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I have a few poems on the theme of alienation today. The first one is called The New Normal, and its epigram is, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke. The programmer told a reporter, I can talk to someone in Japan without leaving the computer lab here at UC Berkeley. I read the feature from my cubicle, a 10-minute drive from the room where they'd sat, asking myself, wouldn't he rather just go to Japan? The electronic thing on my desk had utility. For the 3 hours between the time I finished my work and the time I could badge out and go the fuck home, I could trade Grateful Dead set lists, argue politics, chat with friends at other companies, eavesdrop on incels buying and selling secrets of neurolinguistic programming guaranteed to lure women to bed, all the while looking busy. This guy marveled that he never had to leave his basement again. Such a failure of imagination. Shopping and sex and reading and writing and banking and dating, just one experience. Eyes and fingers in motion without relief. The rest of the body crunched, captive, and still, like I spend my time now. 30 years away, I wonder, can I trade this computer for a time machine? The second one, this is called The Commute, and it's a form called a Fibonacci, and it's based on the Fibonacci sequence of numbers, which is used in computing, but it also represents that golden ratio of spirals in shells and things like that. So it's just it's like a haiku, has a certain number of syllables. It's called The Commute. Fast track, nowhere. Glamorous resume builder. Life wasted in traffic and cube. Another one about the commute. This one's called From Can See to Can't. It has an epigram. I didn't want to be in that field from sun to sun, can to can't, can see to can't see. That's David Honeyboy Edwards, the last surviving Delta blues man. The windows don't open on the luxury coach, crossing the bridge at sunrise. White noise of the cycling engine grows louder every moment as that machine grinds towards the end of its life. The passengers can't hear the clapping calls of endangered rails who bathe in the salt marshes, or the murmuring waves of San Francisco Bay renewing itself. By sundown, the birds frolic elsewhere. Coach crawls to the drop-off spot. Passengers power down their laptops, and through those sealed windows glimpse rows of tents at the underpass. Zippered flaps shield the squatters from pity and the riders from empathy. Supercommuters wonder if the day has come to break that emergency glass and fly the coop. And I have one final one. It's a sestina. I wrote this for a poetry challenge, so we had to write a poem a day, and this was a sestina that was assigned on Easter. So this is called Easter Sestina. Some of my favorite songs were written in a day. I can rise to this challenge. To write a piece that takes a stand accomplishes more than just forcing words to fall into place for the sake of being there. As long as I don't care so much if the poem dies on this first attempt at words that come to life. Writing is more than a hobby. It's a way of life, a chance to let the personality rise. These past months, I pretended to stand for ideals I care nothing about. I'm going to let my work assignments fall right off the side of the desk there until all sense of responsibility dies completely. After all, everyone dies, including me. So what should I do with my life? To sleep, to dream, to rise to someone else's dream? If I must take the stand, swear under oath, I'll confess to quiet quitting way back in the fall when it hit me my job has no there. My time wasted stroking an ego that's not even mine there. My motivation dies when I understand my life has once again become a subplot in someone else's so-called heroic rise. The time has come to stand for something before I fall dead. This week, I go. By fall, my days, my finances rearranged, and there will be hope that before Barbara dies, she'll make a life worthy enough to earn a tombstone. I rise from my status as a follower. No more kneeling, I stand. Maybe even at a mic stand. Muster up the kind of pride that brings a spectacular fall and inspires everyone there to remember that everyone dies. Reclaim their life and rise. It's Easter when we celebrate a rise from the dead, the promise of eternal life, not here, there. I won't fall for the appeal to delayed gratification. I stand up for myself now, and my work ethic dies. So that's my contribution for today. And our next reader is Alice Rogoff. Alice E. Rogoff has poetry and fiction published in many literary magazines, including Blue Collar Review, Transfer, and the environmental magazine Avocet. She has had a commission from the San Francisco Arts Commission about San Francisco women labor organizers. Her recent poetry book is City Canyons, and she is a member of the San Francisco Living Wage Coalition and is on the staff of the Social and Economic Justice Film Festival.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Barbara and Eric, for having us. This is called my first science fiction poem on AI. I remember when there used to be people who worked in person. When I went through a toll at the bridge, I could ask the woman there the directions. At the supermarket line, there one could discuss the difference between nectarines and plums, apples and oranges. In the hospital, a nice smile from a nurse rather than the robot rolling by. There are a few people left, riders on buses, even if almost everyone is on a cell phone. Occasionally, older people will speak to each other. Now, real books are going away, but I know real authors still exist because I go to poetry readings, and so far, the readers aren't robots. Or are they? The spaghetti sauce is really good. This is a story. I went through the North Beach restaurant door and looked to find a table. Everyone at the North Beach restaurant shared a table. The meal was served in family style. Even if my dishes were my own, we all ate together, and sometimes if 2 or more of us ordered soup, we'd be brought a large bowl with a ladle to dip in for each bowl. Today, around 5 in the evening, I was seated at a table with 2 others. One was an Italian gentleman, a long-time resident of the neighborhood. He wore his black suit with a dignified air. His glasses covered a lined face. He ordered calamari. Next to him, across from me, was a woman dressed in, well, very little. The top was like a 2-piece bathing suit, and her shorts came up a little too far, even for a 60s hot pants look. Of course, I knew that North Beach has included topless dancers dancing inside the buildings with large signs advertising enticements and glowing bulbs. "Hi, my name is Glitter," she said, shaking her blonde curls, adding to my suspicions. "The spaghetti sauce here is really good," she said, as I tried not to look at her obvious cleavage. The gentleman at the table seemed unaffected by Glitter's dress and friendly demeanor. Perhaps the local dancers were not an unusual sight. Would Glitter try to entice him, I wondered. Glitter handed me a card. Oh no, I thought, I don't go to places like that. "We're unionizing," she said, turning her head to order the ravioli. "I'm new to one. It's SEIU." That's what I said. I belong to a union too. "The ladies are joining a union," the older man said. "I've been a union man my whole life, even in Italy against the fascismo," he said loudly, banging his hand on the table. "You're not here to talk me out of a job," Glitter said to me. "Oh no, I really like the spaghetti sauce here," I said. "We dancers want to join the San Francisco Labor Council," Glitter added. I had heard of the council, though this was a long time before I became a delegate from my union for it. "Is it hard to join?" I asked. "They have to accept us once we have a union," Glitter said. "We organize," the gentleman said loudly again. "Don't let the mafias get you, Signora." Glitter looked around, frightened. "The managers of those places, this could get us into trouble." A large plate of spaghetti arrived, the sauce emitting sumptuous flavors of garlic and oregano. "Have some ravioli, it's delicious," Glitter offered. In front of her was a massive plate of squares of pillowy pasta. "If you don't see me around again," she began to say in an ominous tone of voice. My twirling the long spaghetti strands got harder after she said that. "This is San Francisco, a union town, my dear," said a deep voice coming from the end of a nearby table. "The longshore workers are here on the docks. Not to worry, solidarity forever." It was the local poet, Jack Hirschman. And this is another story. It's called Night Visitors. Sometimes the spirits of my Aunt Phoebe and Uncle Al haunt me. It is most annoying when they haunt me together at the same time. They are not from the same side of the family. Aunt Phoebe is my grandfather's daughter from his second wife, my step-grandmother Anna. Uncle Al was my mother's brother. For one reason or another, they both disappeared from my life. Uncle Al died when I was a baby. I never knew him. Or maybe I did. My mother said he used to toss me up and down when I was a baby. I don't remember that, or do I? The flight to the air, the catch in his arms to hold me. Uncle Al was a jazz musician. He had rhythm from marching in a military prep school, though he never was in the military. He played the trumpet. He was loud and friendly, I'm told, an extrovert, unlike my introvert. He died of pneumonia when I was 1.5. Phoebe didn't die when I was little. I could have known her, which made her absence from our lives worse. She lived on and off on the east and west sides of Manhattan, a recluse who chose not to visit anyone not long after I was born. At 82, she was found dead in her apartment on 67th and West Side Drive, but once she had been beautiful and talented, a translator who wrote about music. I don't know if she had a sense of rhythm. She knew about classical composers and their lives from birth to death. So sometimes Al and Phoebe both came together to talk to me, perhaps to be guiding lights, but not always welcome. They weren't officially ghosts, they were spirits, not alive like a resurrected ghost, but within my mind, ones who never left, a little bit of remembrance that didn't go away. And now they are both here at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. Phoebe is being a bit testy. She could be both warm and unpleasant. Today is her day to be unpleasant. Al is never unpleasant. Today he is curious. He is more intelligent than one might think, seeing him in his role as a joking band leader. Phoebe makes more bad decisions than one might think as an Ivy League graduate, unusual for a woman during the 30s. They appear in their younger selves. Al is not as portlier as in his 50s, Phoebe not as dry and brittle as in her more adult photos. Phoebe has outgrown her years as a child with long brown hair in braids, wearing a sailor top blouse. Now her hair is curled. She is a legal secretary for Einhorn, who is both a lawyer and a Yiddish poet. After leaving Barnard, she went to Paris for a year. This is what the two have to say today. They are discussing, then arguing. How would you know, Phoebe is saying, you're on the opposite side of Alice's family. We visited it all that day and sat on a swinging chair in the backyard. You did, I didn't, Phoebe answered back. Alice was little, Al said. Phoebe fell silent for a moment. Then she said, I do feel regret sometimes for what I said in my life, the people I pushed away. If I just hadn't made so many snap decisions, Al said, like getting married and divorced. So was I, said Phoebe. You ran away, I said. My mother told me. Yes, it was all too much for me, said Phoebe. I just had a reaction when Cynthia wouldn't tour with me, said Al. So I married Claudia. I needed time to write, said Phoebe. I never could do housework. What does this all have to do with me, I said. We didn't get to know you, said Al. I would have liked that, I said. I felt abandoned. I didn't want to have children, Phoebe said. So why are you here, I shot back. To help you with your music, of course, said Al. It seems like you could be doing better. Remember where the downbeat is. That will help you, Al continued. I think I'm more of a writer, I interjected. Of course you are, said Phoebe. That comes from my side of the family. My sister used to write poems, Al said. Did you know that? She told me once, I said. I didn't know that, Phoebe said. My mother didn't have a sister. She thought you would be like that, I said. I was, just not a good one, Phoebe said. I heard some music just then. Could it be Al's from Mr. Wenscott's dancing band, the one he toured with in Germany in the 1920s? Keep on playing the piano, Phoebe implored. It gets harder, but you can get to the next level. I've heard you play. Just work on it, said Al. The conversation turned to food as a new spirit arrived. It was my great-aunt Rogie, grandfather's sister. My mother was a wonderful cook, I said. She made chicken paprikash and goulash. Hungarian? Phoebe inquired. My favorite dessert was strudel, Al said. I put on too much weight, at least until I played for the troops in France during World War II. Not much to eat there. Anna, my mother, Phoebe said, would combine fruits like plums and peaches and pies. She made cabbages and apples. That was my favorite from Anna. My biological grandmother, Lily, Harry's first wife, wasn't a good cook. When we visited, she pulled out a jar of gefilte fish. Rogie said to Phoebe, I remember you from Thanksgiving dinner. You, your parents, Alice's father, and the lady from the Workmen's Circle Cemetery Association. Anna and Lily were both working women. Anna had been an accountant and Lily a teacher. My mother was a teacher also. Lily's family was from Poland. I remember my father liking pretzels and beer, unlike Anna's sweet wine and butterscotch candy, Anna coming from Austria. Rogie had been Lily's friend. I have regrets also, Rogie said, telling Lily to leave Harry, to be free. But Phoebe would never have been born, I added. This has gotten all too serious, Al said. How about a joke? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? My life was no joke, great Aunt Rogie said, dying in childbirth. When you want to visit, my dear, I was buried in what was now called the Workers' Circle Cemetery. I was serious. I cared about people, about the workers. Harry, my brother, the journalist, had a lot to say about that. He wrote about the Garment Workers Union. I belong to a union, Al said, the Musicians Union, New York local. Now I'm buried in New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey as well, Phoebe moaned. I was found in my apartment. The state put me in an indigent's grave across the river. Phoebe, my family found you a marker with your name, I said. Now, I continued, I think it's time for me to leave you, rolling away from the spirit's loss and regret and a few good wishes. Practice, 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 Phoebe said, completing the joke. And our next reader is Susan Ford. Susan is a poet, storyteller, and writer of short stories. She likes to combine yoga and writing in helping others to heal from injuries and illnesses. In her writing, she especially likes to explore longing and belonging and often finds more questions than answers.
Sure, that's a good spot for you.
I think so. I don't know
That's
though.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, everyone. So, my piece is an excerpt from a short story called About Face. It's about a soldier in the aftermath of war, and it's intertwined in a love story. About Face. He awoke from a dream calling out, "Attention! About face!" I said, "About face! Quick, no malarkey!" At ease. He fell off to sleep, his shirt sobbing wet, sweat pouring from his forehead. I took a warm, damp cloth and soothed his face, wrinkles of worries most of his life. He never knew of the peace that can come if the worrying stops. I'm not sure what war he's in tonight. Gulf War, Vietnam, World War II, World War I, or from another century. Different voices, different languages, splattering out. Sometimes he gives the orders, sometimes he's the soldier, snapping to attention, "Yes, sir!" And sometimes he's crying for his mother. He knows nothing of this. It's another world he enters, reliving scenes from his life or images of others from other times. He wakes up exhausted and wonders what happened. He wasn't always like this. He was fun, had fun, sang, laughed, and wanted to live. Now he lives in silence with frayed nerve endings. I try to massage him, relax him, give him a moment of peace. During the day, he's quiet, asking for very little. He doesn't even want to go for a walk. I open the curtains. He takes in the birds and all the sounds and the songs. I cry at night, feeling as if I've lost him to old haunts, ghosts that found their way inside of him. I've started to write down what he says as he dreams. I try to write his words in the other languages to see if I can weave his history together, if it is his history or those of other voices. His son came to visit after years of not coming. They sat facing each other in the living room with only the sound of birds chirping in the long silences. I brought tea and cookies. I checked to see if they needed anything. He shook his head. I left them, shutting the door, holding my ear close, trying to listen. I know they love each other. It seems they locked it all away in a safe place from long ago. But to unlock that door is more than. That night after his visit, his son's visit, his stirring was different, a deep moaning, bellowing out, filling the room. And then, out of the blue, he sang a lullaby, then another and another. He sat up, cradling a baby in his arms, tears streaming down his face. I'm not the mother of his son. He had him when he was young. I had to get married, baby. We grew up together, were friends, hung out in the same crowd, but the spark did not ignite then. Many years later, when we could see each other, really see each other, with loving eyes, we touched each other's face gently. I was surprised by what I felt. Maybe I had always protected myself, but there we were that night, under the stars, ready, our hearts open. I myself never married or had a child. Now his son is grown. He seems to accept us together as being natural. Tonight he's stirring, moving in the bed as if crawling along the ground, holding something in his hand, probably his rifle. He has no rifle now. He told me when the dreams began that he wanted to heal. Even though he was a hunter, he willingly gave his rifle away. I will not kill another. I will not kill anything. He planted a garden. Growing, that was what he was interested in. He was happy. We were happy. He went to the clinic at the VA. All summer long, each morning, he busied himself in the garden. In the afternoon, he went to therapy 4 times a week. He truly believed he could heal, and he was healing. But one day, it all stopped. He stopped working in the garden without a word. He stopped talking, a quietness sealing him away. He was shutting himself off. At first, he kept up with his group, the men, but eventually, most everything faded. After a while, the garden began to die. I'd go out and work. I'd ask him to come help me. Once he did, but that was it. I kept the garden up for a long time. I'd bring in cut flowers, his prize roses. He would glance at them quickly, then his eyelids shut, shutting life out, returning to silence. So much needs attention. So much is dying away. We hardly touch each other. I try, but he is not able, and it pains him. Tonight, he moves across the bed. His whole body goes limp. In a second, with a leg up, he is swinging. This is Vietnam. The time he stepped into a trap, a rope tightened around his ankle. Then out on the limb, he swung, hanging down, unable to cut himself free, unable to call out, his men out of sight. Time passed. He thought this was it, but his men noticed he was no longer with them and found himself before the enemy could. These are the men you can trust. They understand. A few nights later, I sat recording his orders in words and tears, his long silences. I jotted down any facial expressions or gestures, trying to capture the tone and the accent, trying to find and mark the rhythm, as if I was scoring a piece of music. The hours passed. He was not so upset now, but seemed to be reviving old scenes, old lives he had lived or witnessed. One night I began to record a dialogue. He was on the battlefield. He spoke to Richard. As I wrote, I was smelling the earth, rich and vibrant. I smelled the gunpowder. I made notes, began to ask questions. He ignored me. I waited, observed. He threw his shoulder back and picked up his rifle. I'm sure I heard the shot. My heart ached to be in this fierce battle. Out of my way, out of my sight. You had your chance, you traitor. I'm not going to waste a bullet on you. Step aside. I heard sobbing, apologies, cries, off in the distance, and then the silence that always comes when he's had enough, or when his day out there, wherever it is, seems to end. It is spring morning. He walks past the kitchen table where I'm sitting with my coffee. He's out in the garden after 2 years of not stepping into it. He starts to work, turning the soil. Every once in a while he stops and listens to the chatter. The birds seem so delighted to see him. He will grow flowers and herbs they can eat. He sees the bird bath layered with dried, crusty dirt, washing it and filling it with cool, fresh water. The birds especially like splattering and then flying all around, sipping water, fluttering their wings, washing and cooling themselves. He leaves seeds in small hidden places for only the small birds to find. It's as if he whispers to the birds that we are fooling the blue jays, as if anyone could fool the blue jay who lords over the garden. But he does not forget the blue jay family, Mama, Papa, and 2 little ones. He has always had a plan to build 2 perches for the proud jays with a feeder for larger seeds to keep them busy, away from the little finches and sparrows. I'm thrilled to see him coming alive, confident, a glad expression on his face. He has stopped his shoveling. The cat is chasing a crinkly object, not a ball, but a round seed from an old stone fruit. I watch the cat. He does not engage, but allows the cat space. The cat stretches out into the patch of sun right where he's working. With a small cloth from his back pocket, he dabs his forehead, lifting his shovel. He moves into the shade across the yard. I sigh. He's coming back. He's coming back to me. This morning, he reached over and touched my arm. I pretended to be asleep. Ever so gently, he began touching each finger just lightly. At my little finger he ran his thumb and index finger along the outer edge, holding each knuckle. Then he gave it a little squeeze before placing my hand back on the pillow. I feel him as he turns and falls back to sleep. Maybe we're moving into a new phase. I do not hope. I only wish for him to feel less tortured. Well, to tell the truth, I do hope. I hope for it all. Long afternoons of holding each other and kissing wildly, of smiling, laughing. But whatever might come, I will find some joy in it. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our last reader, Nellie Wong. She's published 4 books of poetry and delights that her next collection will be out this fall. New poems have popped up in When a Woman Tells the Truth, an anthology of women over 80. Nellie sings her poetry into a rhythm that will awaken your heart. It will also start to shake you alive. Thank you. Nellie. I'm gonna read that.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, right in my own neighborhood. And thanks again to Eric for hosting the Laborfest Writers tonight. And I will begin by reading a poem by Phyllis Holliday, who has gone to join the ancestors. And Phyllis was a longtime member of the Laborfest Writers Group. And she wrote fantasy and humor, and a very, very dedicated union member, and worked in offices. And we had a great time working together and doing work in the Laborfest Writers. Her piece is called The Sawmill. Sometimes in the sawmill, a man would lose a finger or a thumb, sometimes a hand. In the worst of sometimes, the mill whistle screams. An ambulance howls its way like a fast wolf. Otherwise, a mill town's quiet. In the night, children wake up to a sound like the barefoot tiptoeing of a something on the boardwalk in freezing cold. More than once, the Shamrock Valhalla Saloon, a frothing beer rises up midair, and an empty mug clanks down on the bar. Boy children going up consider jobs as agricultural agents or insurance men in brown suits with leather briefcases. Where do fingers, hands, worse losses go? Lefty's daughter is afraid to ask. In Pine grade school, she turns away when the rich girl Lucy says, "My pa went to Reno to play the one-armed bandits." Sawmill furnaces blaze. Smoke rises over the town. One day the logging is over. The neck of the woods is down to stumps. A sawmill closes down. Fires go out. In the night, in the dark of the night, it comes, a sound of rubbery slaps, the clumsy clapping. This was a piece in the Laborfest Writers Anthology, and I've lost my 3 older sisters who were born in China, but I often think of the work that they did here as immigrant children and young people. This is called Hoi San American Pantoum for Lai Hong. For my sisters, Ji Lai Hong, also known as Lillian Lu. First chrysanthemum blossoming on a stem. Compelling labor in rented rooms, a house, whatever's home. Wiping clean the stove, aroma of peanut oil lingering. Lop chang, new potatoes, and steamed sand dabs. Compelling labor in rental rooms, a house, wherever's home. Hired by a white family, utilizing Lai Hong's domestic skills, earning $15 a week, turned over to Baba and Mama, her manual movements glinting with specks of gold. Hired by a white family, utilizing Lai Hong's domestic skills, impressing them with her efficiency. Shining plate glass windows and scrubbing floors, never complaining of the time and the load. Impressing them with her efficiency, humming songs of Cantonese opera, memorized from listening to LPs at home, sagas of generals and wars in full voice and falsetto, humming songs of Cantonese opera, lost it to the core of survival and good luck. Hong Bao, wrapped with diligence and smiles, celebrating Lunar New Year with pluck and pomelos. Lost it to the core of survival and good luck, raising Vicky, Melvin, and Julie with her whole body, packing their school lunches in Hong Yin Fao, and feeding me rice and jingok beng, raising Vicky, Melvin, and Julie with her whole body, spending thriftily the earnings of Henry's electrician wages, praising babies in the arms of neighbors on Sacramento Street, inhaling essence of gaoge tong, soup of matrimonial vines, spending thriftily the earnings of Henry's electrician wages, her hair the latest fashion in quince blossom pink, embracing life from walking on dirt paths in Gunduhang, listening with care to her teacher's daily lessons. Her hair the latest fashion and in quince blossom pink. Asking at my engagement, who was your Moing Yin? No go-between, dear sister, said I, just love, her eyes glistening with silent songs from the flute. Asking at my engagement, who was your Moing Yin? Reminding family at parties to save food for her husband. The pearl of her skin radiates from within, her desire gathered in the joy of singing and cooking. Reminding family at parties to save food for her husband. Wiping the stove clean, aroma of peanut oil lingering, her desire gathered in the joy of singing and cooking. First chrysanthemum blossoming on a stem. I've worked using the typewriter, I think, for so many years. And A lot of my pieces come from the typewriter, and I even wrote a piece called Typewriter Backtalk. And this is called Ode to Typewriter. With your 42 keys, your steel cohort, you dare me to pound on you, a dancing, unsure of her steps, gravitating towards a forest of orangutans, monkeys, and toucans, calling out. The first time I touched your body, my fingers tiptoeing into fever, my eyes following an exercise in print, uncomprehending sentences, structure and strength of motion, my fingers rating insects on a ghost white page, legs and wings of the alphabet, fleeing prison of your enameling keys. Oh, beautiful machine, oh, utilitarian office worker's tool. You launch across open airfields, typists transcribing shorthand from dictation, abandoning longhand in favor of speed, human labor still, for food and rent and electricity, for film noir of moonlit, rain-washed streets and prison breakouts. At first manacle to impossible dreams. At first the muscles of the brain, content to lie, anchored, asleep. Your keys punctuate my ears. Your noises saturate my sanctuary. Stillness in motion, stillness in exploring a woman's land of lock, backspaces, and shifts. Your force spills out, floods and puddles, cavernous and hollow, climbing the precipice of granite, the sea itself. Your purpose undefined, you lead, with paper in your platen, going round and round, up and out, conversing with the ringing of the carriage's bell, with the material of transcripts, business letters, and job evaluations, the swing and lilt of a stenographer's hands. You carry my caution and dream of security through winds of inertia, through fangs, fantasy of wild desire. You confront, you wrestle, you grunt, throwing me across the ropes, and I bounce, combative with humor, the liberation of ink, the torch and the song, the sweat of a secretary beyond duty and wage, spreading her wings. Bing cherries in a Chinese bowl. Bing cherries glisten in a Chinese bowl. An orange rooster faces a giant peony on the outside of the bowl. Bing cherries, haw hem, haw what? So sweet, so smooth. Cultivated by a Bing orchard foreman overseeing 30 Chinese farm workers at Llewellyn Nursery in Oregon. The bowl spun by hand in China, painted by an artisan. Multiply this bowl, thousands shipped across the ocean. A Bing for 35 years worked in America, disappeared to China in 1889, restricted by the Chinese Exclusion Act, never returned to Gimsan. Bing cherry, named after a Bing. Little else known of this ancestor horticulturist, his full name, though he sent money home to his family. A Bing, a Bing, a Bing Bop. I call you Uncle Bing. Bing cherries glisten in a Chinese bowl. Women of the World. For the Remember Rosie Jimenez National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice Rally and Speak Out in San Francisco, October 3rd, 2021. Women who plant rice, women who sew pants, women who weave rugs, women who compose songs, women who launder, who wash and wash, women who clean rooms, who dig ditches, women who agitate for a living wage, women who give their bodies, women who invent, women who dance, women who work, and all women work. Women who sacrifice sleep, women who weld, who paint, who doctor, women who see with their ears, hear with their eyes, women who resist their brains and bodies in united fronts, women who build coalitions, women who organize, strategize, materialize, women who teach, who learn, women who are migrants, refugees, escaping violence against their bodies, their children's lives, women who fight against sexual slavery, women who abort, who choose, women who act for clean water, clear skies, for education for all, women who lead, to end wars that promulgate profits, destruction, women who cross borders, women, she, they, we, women of the world unite. We are waves, rivers, and mountains, we who cover this earth, fighting to be free. I'm really happy to be growing old, and I look forward to celebrating my 90th birthday in September. And many of the pieces I've been writing talk about that. And this one is called Toward Midnight. Reading mural into the night, you face death in fragments in dream. You wander hills, skyscrapers, link arms with your sister lie, both warm in overcoats against the chill. No cell phone in your pocket, identity blurred in white space, walking unnamed streets, ignoring detritus, hoping for glimpses of oranges and pomelos. The man in a coolie hat and worn suit, staring at lanterns, lost in strings of the erhu, the chatter of a pigtailed girl holding her grandmother's hand, gripping Lai's hands that once brushed bamboo, cat pawing grass. You laugh toward suya, a midnight bite, periwinkle snails steaming in black bean sauce in old Chinatown. Thank you. Thank you. That closes the reading by the Laborfest Writers. And I think we have time. We would love to have questions and answers or general comments and whatever you'd like to say. Thank you for coming too. Come on, I can't believe it. Voices are quiet.
We could all have a glass of wine and have
Yes, and you're welcome to enjoy the wine and the water and the cookies and the cheese that we've put out.
Nellie, I have a quick
Go ahead.
announcement. I have a few extra Aaron Peskin for Mayor
there signs if anyone lives in the city and could put one up, they can get one from me while we're having wine and cookies.
Oh. Can you have the signs with you?
Here, they can just see me, yeah.
Just hold it up.
Oh, you wanna see it?
Yeah, that would be.
So people can see it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't have an office space, though, do we, to put it up? But maybe someone can take and hang it in your window.
Yeah.
She's going to hand them out
Okay,
for everybody.
sure. All right. So anything anyone else want to say something, or you didn't like the reading? You liked the reading? All right.
This is a group that typically has no opinions about things. They really defer to.
All right.
Well, I have to say, I love the poem about the typewriter, because you and I were both typists.
Yeah, I remember. Yes, yes.
And Barbara, I really like the AI one, the poem.
Yeah, and I think for so long, office workers, pink collar and office workers and white collar workers were not really considered part of the working class. And I think that has been really blown away by the activism and the unions and the working men and women that we all are. And and a friend, a late friend, comrade, Karen Brodeen of mine said, "Nellie, write about work." I said, "What? About being a secretary?" And then I thought, wow. The typewriter went to work.
I wish I still had a typewriter.
I know.
Just
I think Eric had some in the typewriters right here in the. Yeah.
We can supply you.
And you have some for sale too, don't you, Eric?
There's just a couple around.
Yeah.
I have a good pipeline to tell.
Well, I think some of us learned to type on the typewriter, and I was so scared of learning to use a computer. I said, "Oh, I'll never learn this." I did slowly, but. And then writing by hand is just another story. Anything? Okay. Okay, we can drink and eat. Thank you very much for coming.